Uh,
What's going on, everybody? Hey, today we are back with another Think and Grow Rich Mindset episode, and we have our lovely co-host John Bowden here today. And today we're going to be talking about decision making, which is step number 7 in the 13 Steps to Riches in the Think and Grow Mindset series. And so this is actually episode 7, even though this is step 7. So today we're talking about decision. Honestly, probably one of the most powerful things, probably the simplest things that we can, concepts we're going to talk about, but most powerful. And sometimes simple is what works, right? And a great quote from Brendan Bouchard, one of my favorite quotes, is it may be common sense, but doesn't mean it's common practice. And so that's what we're talking about today, is how to make common sense also common practice. So before we dive in here today, I'm going to let Mr. John Bowden explain to you guys who he is and why you should listen to him. So John, take it over, my friend.
My name is John Bodnar, and I'm a coach at BSB Wealthy Body Coaching. And my purpose in life, perhaps maybe not ironically, but appropriately, is to help people make decisions for themselves that actually serve them. As someone who has struggled to make proper decisions for himself in the past, now that I actually have that skill, my goal and my purpose is to pass it on to others so they can maximize their lives. Which is exactly what we're talking about today.
And the only thing that qualifies us to have this conversation is that we've made a lot more mistakes, a lot more setbacks than most people have. That's the reason why, right? And so the only way you actually learn is by going through it, making the mistakes, learning the right lesson. So let's talk about how we made some wrong decisions in our past here, John. So first slide. Accurate analysis of over 25,000 people who had experienced failure disclose that a lack of decision was near the head of the list of the 30 major causes of failure, which we talked about last week. So if you haven't watched episode 7 from last week, go back and watch that. We talked about the 30 causes of failure. And all lack of decision is literally procrastination. And procrastination is like a dirty word, right? It's a dirty word in most people's vocabularies. I don't know one person who uses the word procrastination in a positive manner. So with that being said, John,
wrong.
It just sounds wrong, exactly. So tell me why, like, what about lacking a decision is wrong?
Well, the dirtiest part of it is that, as we've said in the past, not making a decision is making a decision. So what's silly about it is people see like, oh, I didn't make a decision. Therefore, I'm just putting it off, and they recognize that that's a problem. But they don't recognize is that a decision is getting made either way. So the lack of decision is a decision, but the reason that that's important is that you cannot avoid making a decision. So you might as well make the right decision. When you avoid making a decision at all, doesn't count, doesn't help you. Still a decision.
Yeah. It'd be like a good example, analogy in memory of Tim not being with us here today, is that like if your goal, again, everyone has goals, and if your goal in this analogy is that you want to score as many points as possible, right? And you know what? You're concerned about your percentage, but the real goal is just how many points can I score? And so, but if you're so concerned with your percentage, you only shoot 2 times and you make 2 baskets, right? Then your percentage is 100%. But your overall scoring, if we're playing basketball and you're shooting regular jump shots, is 4 points, right? Whereas the person who shoots 10 times and it's only 50%, they made 5 baskets, right? And maybe they failed 5 times, but they were also successful 5 times. And that in my scoreboard, 5 is better than 2. Right. And so when it comes to decisions, that's exactly how I look at decisions. It's like, it's not about the number of percentages, the percentage of decisions that I made that maybe went the way I thought they would, but it's like, if I just make enough decisions, enough of those decisions will eventually go my way. And when most people, like, they're scared, like the reason why people don't make decisions is because of unknown, because of fear. That's one of the biggest reasons that we know people don't make decisions. You should be afraid by only taking 2 shots. Like, that's what's scary. Like, taking 2 shots is scary. Why don't you take 5 shots, 10 shots, 20 shots? The more shots you take, the more likelihood of you are actually to getting the objective, which is to score points.
Exactly. Well, to give you another quote, a very popular quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Good old Wayne Gretzky. And that's actually just a really good thing to keep in mind when it comes to decision making, is that if you have no chance of success if you don't at least take the shot, if you don't decide to take the shot. And something else, just to be clear, Tim is still alive. He's just not hosting today, but he is he is still with us.
He's alive. He's very lean version. Maybe he's like barely alive. He's got no fat on his body right now. He's getting ready to step on stage. So
Yeah.
it's awesome. All right, and then let's talk about this. So, an analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes. So now, the first example, we talked about people who had been met with failure. Now we're talking about people who have been met with success. It shows that they had basically had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and changing them slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, when you see that, like, where do you see that show up maybe in your life, or where do you see have an example of that where you've seen this habit show up in maybe you or other people around you?
So I see that with my fitness actually is, I reach a decision of like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym today. A really simple example. I'm going to go to the gym today. I reached that really quickly. In fact, I technically decided that months and months and months ago, maybe years ago. But changing what my actual plan is, that happens really slowly. Whether it's over a 12-week period, then I do something different, or maybe it's like, okay, after a few months, like, this isn't really doing it for me anymore. Like, okay, maybe I'll change something there. But the core decision of I'm going to go to the gym remains the same and gets made, just about every single day. And so what I see from this is that these successful people, they reach a decision immediately because they know they need to make a decision in order to get anything out of it. And then if it's something that needs to be changed, changing them slowly. I'm trying to think of an example of where changing it slowly in terms of other than like outside of the gym fits the book. So if you have a good example of that, I'd love to hear it. But the reaching decisions promptly part makes sense to me.
Yeah. How I kind of see this is like it's basically like making the commitment first. Like so the decision is that I'm going to be successful in my fitness. It's a good example. So like you made that decision, and then let's say that you're like, okay, well, I made the decision that I'm going to specifically be a powerlifter, right? And you're like, like fitness and like working out is definitely like that's like that decision is right, but maybe it's not powerlifting, maybe it's weightlifting, maybe it's CrossFit, maybe it's running, right? And so like you basically slowly move from being a powerlifter to being a Olympic weightlifter or a CrossFitter or a runner, right? And so that's how I kind of see it being made. It's like you ultimately just made the decision that you're going to do fitness, right? And then you basically can you adjust your decision based on like, oh, now that I'm powerlifting, like I really don't like to, I don't like the deadlift. And so instead of being a powerlifter, now you're gonna do weightlifting because you like to do snatches and cleans. Same thing can be said with business. You're like, okay, I made a decision that I want to be financially free. And so then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm gonna go into business, right? And maybe business isn't the route for you. Then maybe you go into investing, maybe you go into stock trading. Like ultimately, like you made the decision that you're going to be financially free. You're going to like the end goal. Like you made that decision, and then from there you make you make the changes on how you actually get there. So I actually see it more from that standpoint rather than being like, you know what, I decided that X decision, and then I slowly decided B decision. I don't see it so much from that standpoint. It's almost like a growth and evolution of like I started here, and then from there I learned, and I moved and then I moved over to here. That's how I recognize this.
Got it. So really it's like setting a goal essentially. Saying I am committed to, like you said, being financially free. I'm committed to being a millionaire. Okay, here are the steps I need to take. Like, okay, I made this decision, bam. And now, maybe I need to do something different than that or more or whatever. That makes sense.
Yeah, because ultimately, if you're looking at this from like the small day-to-day decisions, like like what time you ate, like what time you eat today could change tomorrow. And while obviously you can change those things slowly or fastly, I think really the point that I'd like to focus on is like the big intention. Like what's the big one? What's your intention when you wake up today? What gets you going? What motivates you? Why are you doing that? And that's the big thing. And then from there, all your decisions will move based on experience and based on feedback from what you're experiencing. So, so I think like again, an example inside the book was Henry Ford's. He made the decision that he was going to basically create mass automobiles, and at that time, it would be like us thinking that we'd all have our own airplane. right?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thinking it was back then. It's like, there's no freaking way, right? It's like, there's no way we're all going to have our own algorithms. Just like today, we're like, there's no way you'd have your own plan. And so, but he made it the decision, like that was going to be his decision. Like that was his decision. He made it. And then basically from there, like how he initially set out, like was not, it didn't make sense. But as he started to learn, as the market gave him feedback, he slowly moved, he moved the needle based on what the market was telling him and what his actual resources were. And so I think that's the most important thing. So like in an example today and age is like, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to lose 30 pounds. It's like, great, make the decision, right? I want to lose 30 pounds. Great. And then the first thing you do is you do keto, right? And like, oh, I like keto, but this part I didn't like about it. Okay, boom. Makes you like, hey, like I like keto, but you know what? I still like to eat some carbs. So you know what? I started doing macros, right? And all of a sudden they do macros, like, oh, I love macros, but I don't know what my macros should be. Like then I decided, I should maybe hire a coach who understands macros. And so these are like how you change your decision from like doing keto all the way to all of a sudden now you have a coach who's teaching you how to do macros and then teaching you how to actually change your mindset rather than just focusing on macros as well, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, like, And so that'd be like a good example of someone changing their decisions throughout the process, but not in a way that they didn't decide that, hey, I'm gonna lose 30 pounds versus I'm not gonna lose 30 pounds. It's like, goal to lose 30 pounds, keep that. Now, how you lose 30 pounds, that's going to adjust as you get feedback.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful process, because as long as you stay committed to goal A, it really doesn't matter where you find yourself, assuming you don't do something that makes it so you literally can't hit that goal. But yeah, as long as you're committed to the goal, then you're going to change your decisions along the way. And looking at it over time, it's way faster, way shorter, way longer than making that initial decision.
One of the great Chris Carone quotes that I think about a lot from his book, the Limitless book, is he says, goals in stone and plans in sand. Basically means like those big goals, things that are important to you, like those things will probably always be there. But as you plan to get there, that you might have to adjust them. So okay, which goes to our next slide, which is actually really good, is if you are influenced by opinions of others when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in the undertaking of transmuting desire into money. And so this should have said, when you're influenced by opinions of others. And I think that's really powerful to understand that any sort of goal you go for that's worth going for, there's probably going to be some challenges along the way. There's going to be some doubts, not just by you, but people around you. And there's no better person to tell you that you can't do something than people who are closest to you, because you know why? Because it's their projection on, like, they're just projecting their limiting beliefs onto you. And so when you're going through your journey and you have your goals, people will get in your way and they're going to give you their opinions. They're going to give you their opinions about why they can't do it. And if you're going to listen to their opinions, well, you will not be successful, because ultimately you're depending on others to make you happy. You give away your personal power, which is, it's just funny because we had this example in our meeting just a couple minutes ago, but it applies to the same situation. Like, as soon as you let someone else take the power from you by you being influenced by their opinion of you, and you change your goals based on that, you'll not be successful, because it just shows that your goals really weren't that important to you, because, or maybe your goals were done with the wrong intention. They were done in vain. They're done at a something that didn't actually matter, like status, right? So that's how I see this slide. But John, tell me, what are your thoughts on the slide?
I actually see it super simply, in that if you are not committed to yourself, right? Or let's actually go the other way. If you are committed to yourself, if you are committed to the goal, and you know that it's a good goal, then you're actually not going to be influenced by the opinions of people around you. So I think it's in part saying like okay, set aside other people's opinions, but at the same time, you will inherently not be influenced by other people's opinions if you have the right goal and if you are truly committed to that goal. So on one hand, it's like, yeah, you got to accept that, okay, yeah, this is my goal, here's my opinion of it, and I'm not going to let other people bring it down. But again, if you find yourself being brought down by other people's opinions, maybe it's not as simple as saying, oh, I shouldn't be paying attention to their opinions. Maybe it's like, maybe I do need to adjust the goal. Not in a way like, maybe my goal needs to be higher, right? Maybe it needs to be a better goal, or a stronger goal, a tougher goal. But you need to look at it from both sides. If you find yourself being influenced by people's opinions. It's like, what do I need to change? Right? Do I need to change the goal? Probably not. Do I need to change how I look at it? Probably. But you need to be open to changing one or the other.
Yeah. You know, the example I think of in this situation was, it was 3 years into my business career, and I worked a lot, I struggled a lot, and honestly, I was just trying to figure it out, And I remember one time having a conversation with my mom, and she was like, "You know what, Logan? Like, you just work so much. Like, you should go, you should go relax. You should take the weekends off. Like, you shouldn't work so much, right?" And I remember her saying that, and I just was like, my instant reaction was like, "You don't even know why I'm working so much. Like, you don't even know what my goals are, right?" And ultimately, and like I said, the people sometimes closest to us are the ones who have the ability to create the biggest influence over us in a negative way. And like, she had no intention of being negative. She was just literally projecting her beliefs, and how like she would never work from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like, she would never do that. So she's like, "You just shouldn't do that, right? Because that's just not how it's done." And so she was just projecting her beliefs onto me. And in her situation, it was right. She's got a job. There's no reason that she should be at dental hygienist from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like, she only sees it through the lens of her. And you should understand that, where people are coming from. And so ultimately, like, of course, I didn't listen to her opinion, because it didn't make sense, And then, so you just got to understand that the opinions, and I'm not saying that opinions aren't important to listen to. You just got to also understand through the lens of that opinion is coming from. And so now, for instance, if I hired a mentor and I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on them and they gave me their opinion, well, you're damn right, I'm going to listen to it. Right. So also understanding that, like, some people's opinions do matter. You also have to understand through what lens is that opinion coming from, right? And like, what is their intention? Now, my mom's intention was not that. Also, it was honestly just make herself feel better about herself, because she couldn't fathom how someone could work as much as I was working at that time, right? And so it's always important for you as the person to ultimately trust yourself, understand your own situation, understand what your goal is. And so being able to do that, it's like, yeah, well, does me working from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day at this moment in my life, does it make sense for me to get to where I want to go? And at that moment it did. Now, it no longer does to this day, but in that moment it did. And so it's always important for you to always understand your situation as well, and like, ask yourself that question: like, does this serve my goal? Like, does this decision serve my goal? Right? So it's the opinion of yourself that matters more than the opinion of anybody else.
Definitely. And I think that actually translates pretty well into the next slide. You said, like, you gotta trust yourself. You also have to have the courage to do so, to be brave enough to trust yourself. Because I'll read this one out since we're already talking about it. It says, so I'm not definite of decision. Anyway, so decision requires courage, right? Like, definitive decision requires courage. So the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, like, that was an incredibly courageous thing. They were putting their names on something that caused a lot of conflict, really, for entire, most of Europe, and of course us as well. And so, like, in order to have the courage to make a decision, you also have to have courage and trust in yourself to say, like, I am right in this decision too. And what makes it a lot easier is by knowing that if you are at least making a decision, it's a hell of a lot better than putting it off and not making the decision, because that's always the wrong decision. So if you're struggling with courage to make decisions, like, you can at least look at it that way. Like, I will definitely be better off by at least doing this than by not doing anything at all. So that's where you can pull some courage from. But then you also have to work on it. You have to build it. You got to break your beliefs. You got to make sure that you actually do trust yourself and believe in yourself, and that you listen to your gut in order to have the courage to make difficult or even simple decisions day to day.
Yeah. And exercising in your decision muscle is just that, it's a muscle, right? So it's something that it's a skill. It takes time to feel confident each decision you make, but each decision you make, and the quicker you do it, the less thinking, less procrastinating you do, it just becomes something that you just do, and you just understand that, like, literally the only wrong decision is to not make decisions. And when you're able to practice that time and time again, you realize that no matter if the decision, like, if you have an example between green and red, like, it doesn't matter what the actual, like, there is no actual right answer, but like, green is going to take you down one path and red's going to take you down one path, right? There might be a couple more ups and downs depending on what path you go down, but ultimately, like, there is no wrong. Like, the only wrong decision is you thinking that there is a wrong decision. Because ultimately wrong and right for like outside of, I mean, maybe even outside of morals is like, it literally is just based on your own opinion. You know, like we get to have very different morals. And so my view of you right and wrong is could be different than your vision of right and wrong as well. And so ultimately it just comes down to like what your own opinion is. So even like what's wrong or right is literally just our own opinion. But ultimately at a fundamental level, just not doing anything is the only thing that's going to make sure, just going to ensure you are where you're at. So unless your goal is to stay where you're at, which again, if that is, then by golly, just don't make any decisions. Um, and just understand that anything that's not growing is dying. That is a world that we do live in. So if you're okay with going backwards and sliding back, that's what actually stagnation is, right? Then don't do anything. Like literally take no actions, make no decisions. And I would say this too, the second piece of this. Sometimes it's not always about you making the decision. So like for instance, if you have a team or if you have a partner, like trust in them to make decisions as well, right? And push them to make decisions. So it's not always about you making the decision in every situation. It's like maybe you trust somebody, you put them in a role, whether it be again in a company, whether it be on a team, whether it be in a relationship, but you trust them to make a decision. And so like give them the confidence to make that decision as well. And don't just take that right from them as well, but like encourage them to make decisions, encourage them to make fast decisions as well. Because ultimately, like it's not just like to scale your life, it's can you scale decision making, right? So like, obviously first you must master yourself, and then from there, give people the bar belief to like if you want other people to make good decisions around you, it starts with you first. Okay? And I love the story of the Declaration of Independence. That's why I threw it in here. But not only like was it a bold decision, but it was like them putting literally their necks on the line for something they believed in. So again, like they were like, here's what we're gonna do. We want to be free, right? And that's what they signed this piece of paper. And you guys might have heard it before, you know, back in 1776. And they made the decision that they're going to be free from the British rule, right? And it's like I love that example because it's a bold decision. And do you think that they knew what was actually going to come of it? Like had they ever broken away from Great Britain before, or any country for that matter before? Have they ever done that before?
No way.
Right. And so they didn't know what the outcome was, but they based their decision on what they felt was right. They based their decision on that, you know what, I'm okay. I'm okay with even if I die for my country, I'm willing to die for my country because I believe this is so right. And if people base their decisions on that concept, and I'm not saying go out there and like basically like go out there like take risks where you actually like that is on the line. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But because if you realize that most decisions you make have nothing to do with life and death, you start to realize like how minimal the risk actually is. And that's really the message that I want to get across, that people are so afraid to take action. Like, what is actually the worst case scenario? Like, think about that. Like, what is actually worst case scenario? Yeah, like most people's like it's the fear of death, which in 99% of the decisions you make literally have zero impact. It's the fear of loss, right? Which are all fears, like fear of money, fear of loss of money, fear of loss of relationships, fear of looking dumb. Like the amount of actual pain that those things cost are so minimal. Maybe just like literally hours, maybe at the most, maybe a day or two. You actually lost all your money, lost all your relationships. You might hurt, right? But all that hurt is just emotional. It's not actually real pain, right? It's like that's your biggest risk. That's like the worst thing. And but the upside, the reward for that decision could be life changing. It could be you experiencing life at a level that you never thought was imaginable, right? And so that's literally your risk reward when you make a decision. And ultimately, by making no decision, you're just cementing the fact that like nothing will happen, right? And you give yourself zero chance to be able to live this life of absolute amazement, absolute euphoria. So that's why the power of decision is so important.
Head on. I'll give you a personal example. That is, so thanks to your inspiration, Logan, I decided to my wife and our house into an Airbnb, so that way, like if we go on a trip, we can make some money while we're gone, or if we need to make some money, we can go on a trip. And I was really excited about it. I prefaced it with like, hey, you want to learn how to make like $1,500 extra this summer? And she was all excited about it. But then when it came down to the actual details, absolutely, she was afraid. She was afraid of having people in her house. She was afraid about our stuff being, being damaged or lost or stolen. She was, and still is right now. She's afraid of that. And I'm still working through on, okay, like how do I break past this fear? How do I get her to realize like, okay, we don't like the benefit from it greatly outweighs the risks by a lot. And if we're constantly making decisions around fear, then we're not going to have the life that we want. Certainly not anytime soon. And so what I need from her, or need to instill in her, or help her realize that it's there, is the courage to make a decision like that, the courage to have people in her home, right? Have strangers in her home. And I'm sold completely on it, which doesn't necessarily help because I'm just sitting here telling her how great it's going to be. But the reality is because she has more courage for it. And I'm a patient guy, so it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and how.
Yeah. And you have to go down this rabbit hole and like get real specific, but I think the easiest way to help people make decisions when a decision is like for the greater good rather than about ourselves. And so like if we're using that frame of work, it's like think about the people that we're actually helping. That literally like, especially in the market we live in, like it's hard to find housing. It's hard to find a hotel, especially a reasonable one, right? And if we have this opportunity that we're not using a resource, an asset that we have, it's only our right to serve people and help people. And by us like being selfish and being afraid, like does that help anybody? And so that's always that's a clear philosophy on how you're able to make decisions as well. It's like we're able to give it through service rather than like, are you making your decision through service or are you making it through about you, right? And I'm not saying all decisions about you are not bad, but if you're able to like really come out from the greater good, it's like, how's this decision serving the world? How's it making a better place? Then all of a sudden it becomes easier to make the decision, right? Look at these guys who risked their lives, right? They did it for like, they wanted their kids, their grandkids. They wanted us 245 years later to be talking about them because you know what? It was the right thing to do. And you know what? They were right.
Yeah.
Whether the outcome was it happened or not, like they were right. Right. And it was just like what happened with the Revolutionary War, of like, fighting for slavery. Like it was the right thing to do, whether it was like whether they won or not, like it was irrelevant because they're fighting for the right thing to do. Not Revolutionary War, the Civil War.
Oh, Civil War.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Civil War. Like they're fighting for the right thing to do. Right. And so ultimately it didn't matter if they won or lost. Right. It's like we're fighting for this equality essentially. And look where we are now. Right. And so like it was obviously the right thing to do. So that's any sort of decision making. If you can make it from an altruistic path, then like it doesn't matter what the outcome is. Like who cares if someone steals your stuff? Who cares, right? Who cares if somebody damages it? Like things can be replaced, right? But your values and who you are, like that sticks with you forever. So there you go. John's still sold, he says.
Sorry, I'm what?
You're still sold. I know.
Oh yeah. I'm still sold. Undoubtedly.
Awesome. All right, John. Anything else you want to add to this last slide?
Other than just perpetuating the point of like, yeah, it does take courage to make the right decisions, or to make decisions in general. So just accept that, not only do you have to make a decision no matter what, like that for me helps with courage, because it's like, okay, I don't have the courage to make a decision, but if I don't make the decision, that's still a decision. Just kind of makes it silly in a way. Like, okay, then why would I not do this? So just acknowledge like, okay, yeah, it's gonna be scary, requires courage, but ultimately you're gonna get to the same point no matter what, as long as you keep making decisions time and time again. You're gonna get lucky a time or two, you're gonna get unlucky a time or two, but regardless, you just gotta keep deciding every day.
Person who makes the most decisions, they're the one who gives themselves the highest percentages to win the game. And hey, if you've ever been to Vegas, like that whole town was built on numbers. It was built on percentages. And so if you want to be successful, just like those Vegas hotels are, like give yourself the best percentages, right? Yep. And that's like the more times you shoot, the more decisions you make, better chances you have being successful. Everyone calls it lucky, but sometimes you just got to be in the game in order to win the game.
Which does not apply to gambling. So that is the lesson that I will leave you with.
I'm not condoning gambling at all.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you guys all for listening. John, I appreciate you being on here sharing your wisdom. This was episode number 8, step number 7, decision-making process. One of my favorite things to talk about because it's so simple. You literally can just like change your mindset today, tomorrow, in a moment, and your life can totally be different. And it's super powerful. And that's why we talk about it. So hopefully it allowed you to make a couple decisions in your life, and maybe even a big one at that. So if it did, let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback and your input. But that's all we got for today. We'll be back next week with step number 8 in this 13 steps to riches in the Think and Grow Rich Mindset series. So, John, thank you so much, and we'll chat with everybody soon. Bye.
See ya.